evening, everyone. You are watching Politically Correct, and of course, I am your host, Maya Hayakawa. Now, how relevant is higher education in our universities? What opinions do the students hold regarding the status and relevancy of our public and private universities? I paid a visit to Daystar University. I just wanted to have a sneak peek of what the students think about our education status. So let's have a look. Hi guys, I'm joining you guys all the way from Daystar University, and today's topic of discussion is the status of higher education in Kenya. So I'm really curious to get to know what the students think. We have an idea of what our professionals think and what our regulatory bodies think, but what do the students think? Let's go find out. The question that I have for you guys is that in terms of the education that you're receiving here at Daystar, do you guys feel that it is relevant to your area of interest or the field that you would like to see yourself working in? What do you think?
Yeah, it's relevant, very relevant for me, because like in PR, there's a particular course that is called INS that talks about cultures, as in you have to understand the different dynamics of people that you're going to interact with in life. So I think it's good.
Anyone else? Any views?
Yeah, like he said, in PR you have to know your target audience. So if you understand the culture of your target audience, it's easier for you to, relate to them, know what they want, and be able to reach out to them. Yeah.
Anyone else?
As for me, doing electronic media, I think it's good, but the way we do it, it could be better. Like I usually compare, since it's about higher learning, I compare about the education levels we have here and those abroad. Like if you compare someone who's doing communication in a different university, upstate, and here it's different. Like here, yes, we learn a lot and we learn very good things, but in terms of practicality, we don't really do much of practical, and I think practical is really important in your area of study, and it even helps you know what exactly it is you want to do. Yeah.
All right. Would you guys go to a public university? Why or why not? Yeah.
Personally, I wouldn't go to a public university because I think morals in the public university is not quite addressed as compared to the private university, and moral values are very important in our lives, although we ignore them. Yeah, they are very important. So I wouldn't personally go to a public university.
And why do you think the public universities don't have morals? What's different about a public university versus a private one that defines the moral standards?
The people who help us here are our lecturers mostly. I think in a public university, the lecturer really doesn't care. But in a private university like here, they care about who you're going to become, and some things that we do and try to advise us on the things we shouldn't do and the things that we should do. Yeah.
Would you guys join a public school university? Why or why not? I'm assuming because Daystar is a private uni, so you had the option.
So actually for me, I used to study architecture in China. But then for one reason or another, I had to come back. So people ask me, why didn't you study architecture here, blah, blah, why you in Daystar? Okay, let me, to be clear, I like what I'm doing now, but if I was imagining going to University of Nairobi or a public school which offers architecture. I can imagine the years it takes. It's longer to do architecture here, and I was factoring in that maybe the students strikes, lecturers going on strike, all those distractions and something that will lengthen the time you have to spend in university. So I was like, I don't want to spend 8 years getting my undergrad.
And that was a short snippet of the conversation that I had with some of the lovely students I had the chance of meeting at Daystar University. They were sharing their views and perceptions on the status of higher education in the country. Now, I'll be sharing some of these snippets throughout the show, and it's the perfect way to set the stone for our conversation tonight. Here with me today in studio, I have Professor Noah Midamba, Vice Chancellor of KCA University, who has quite the impressive CV, having immense experience in developing leading universities. I am also joined by Dr. Karimi, the Deputy Commission Secretary in charge of accreditation of Commission for University Education. That's, of course, CUE, which is the body responsible for regulating and accrediting universities in our country. She is here to represent the CEO, Professor Some, who sends his apologies as he is currently out of the country and would not be able to make it to the show tonight. Thank you both for coming, and I thank you so much for just taking the time to join us today. I know that you're very, very busy, and so I appreciate you just taking the time to join us here. And like I said, I had a discussion with the university students, and it was interesting to hear what their viewpoints are in terms of the status of our education in Kenya. One of the major issues that they brought out is that they didn't feel like they'd want to be a part of public universities because people seem to have this negative perceptions towards public universities. Some say that there's a lack of moral standards. Some say that there's no exposure in our public universities, which we see in our private ones. And part of the Universities Act came out to bridge this gap and the standards and at least standardize our education sector in higher education between the public and the private universities. So the question that I have is, do you feel that in some way, at least, with the new act in place, there has been at least the gap has been bridged a little bit more and education has been standardized between the two sectors? What would you say?
Maya, what I can say is that with the Universities Act coming out in 2012, that's when it came out. It helped at least bridge that particular gap. And at least right now we can be able to look at the quality that is going on in both public and private universities. In the past, and I'm sure Professor will agree with me, in the past we only used to concentrate on what kind of quality is being offered in our private universities. And we put a lot of force and a lot of standards that they would need to look at. But ever since now we had the Universities Act 2012, the public universities have been forced to look at their systems, to look at their internal structures, and align them to the requirements of quality. So it has actually helped in building the whole area of university education.
And Professor Midamba, of course, you being the Vice Chancellor of KCA University, having led a private university, why then, and I know that you were a great advocate for this, Universities Act, you participated in developing the Act, correct?
That's correct.
And so for me, the question I have is, why then are you concerned of, the standard of education with our public universities? Here you are, running a private university. How does that even affect you?
Maya, let's look at it from a global standpoint. Right now, if you look at the continent of Africa, there is 1 billion people in Africa. Out of 1 billion people, there is only 5 million that has collective degree. We have 40 million people in Kenya. Only 2% of that 40 million has collective degree. Now, when you look at the development trend, and I spend a lot of time traveling around the world, perhaps more than most Kenya will ever be, and I also have spent years in higher education, being part of the top quality higher education system in the United States. Kent State University, where I came from, was a public university, but has moved to Carnegie Research One. Kent State is larger than University of Nairobi, but it's run exactly like a private university, and does not anymore, most universities in America, does not anymore receive large public funding. They're almost self-funded. They're almost private universities. They are all run like private universities. So my point is, there is no one single country in the world that is developed today without education. And higher education play a major role in that. When you look at Singapore, Singapore has moved from the state where Kenya was to the first world. When you look at South Korea, the same thing. When you look at the entire Southeast Asia, they put a lot of resources in education, and particularly higher education. And that has revolutionized the whole development trend in the country. So what we're looking at in Kenya, and by the time I came at opportune time in 2011, and of course 2012, then we have the Education Act. I was one of the 4 vice chancellors who was appointed by the minister to harmonize the Education Bill 2012. There was Magoa, University of Nairobi, Ole Mugenda, Kenyatta University, and Mount Kenya, and myself, KCA, that were invited to harmonize bill. What I was looking at that particular time is we were so far off the base to where we needed to be. And I was challenging my colleagues in public universities that we have spent the last 50 years doing exactly what the British left. We had following what was called Commonwealth system of education. And the Commonwealth system of education called for the pedagogical approach in that area is heavy lecture and exams. And so there was no interaction between the student, between the learner and the teacher. And so we have to change our pedagogical approach if we want people to learn. So our students are really what I said, the language they use. They're lectured to death, and then they're given exams. Then they come out with certificate. And that certificate is meaningless because if an employer asks simple 3 questions, what do you know about our company? What do you bring? What skills do you have? And what vision do you have for this company we're applying for or for the government? They can't answer except to say, I have a bachelor or I have a master. And in sometimes they have PhDs.
Yes.
And they have absolutely no skills at all. Now, if you ask average American those 3 questions, they will answer in 1 second. And therefore, there's something wrong. And what I called for was completely overhauling our system of education. For instance, the word we injected, and we still have a very serious debate, is a choice. Choice for Kenyans to choose where they want to go to school and what they want to study. Because, JAB was basically, the moment you get a letter from JAB, it was the death to your aspiration in education. You can take a potential aeronautic engineer, and then you're told you're going to study history to become a teacher. And so that was the end of you. So what we are calling for is for Kenya to have a choice, and with the government money, okay, I received government money in America, and I went to private universities. And I made a choice where I want to go, what I want to study. That is the way it is in South Korea. That's the way it is in Singapore. That is the way it's in America and the Scandinavian countries, where education is highly developed. And therefore, what we needed to do was to get rid of the British system and create a system that's going to cater for our development. And we call for an overhaul so that students can have a choice, so that there can be competition in higher education, innovation and creativity.
I really like that, Professor Midamba, that you brought that out, because have you ever come across someone who is working in their workplace and they're just grumpy? And sometimes I think to myself, they're grumpy because they're not passionate about what they're doing. So what I like about that is that you're also teaching our young adults to learn a lot more in terms of self-awareness, to get to know themselves, get to know what they're passionate about, what they want to do. And when I was having a chat with our university students, Dr. Karimi, one of the major concerns that came out was that that they feel that our culture has so much emphasis on documentation, so much emphasis on you getting a certificate, which we've seen from the young age. I think, it's in our education mindset, all the way from KCPE, all the way until, our graduates. And one thing that they were saying is that they would love to see universities supporting and encouraging more of talent, creative arts, entertainment, sports. Why can't somebody go to, university on a sports scholarship, for example, where you have a university that really nurtures that talent? So the question that I have is that, do you feel that there has been more support in that sector where we are encouraging talent? Has there been an improvement in that sense?
Yeah, I like what Professor Midamba was referring to when he said that many of our students want the paper. And that's how it is. You think of the society that we're living in. I want to be referred to as Dr.Karimi. In fact, I'll introduce myself in such a way that you get to realize, first of all, I'm Doctor before Flora or even Karimi.
Very true.
And that needs to change the whole society. As long as our society is so based on paper, then even the talents that we want to promote in the country will not get there. Because everyone is thinking of, I need that paper saying I'm a doctor. Then thereafter, as a sideshow, I can call it a sideshow, then I will pursue my talent. But as you're saying, that needs to flip over in such a way that we also realize that the talents that individuals have need to be enhanced. I remember there was a time I was a registrar of one of the universities for quite some time. And I would get so amazed at how a student has gotten to his 4th year and calls his parents in and tells his parents, by the way, this is your paper. Have your paper.
Absolutely.
Allow me now to pursue my dreams.
Right.
And many students are in that mode of thinking, whereby they have been forced into the system because of societal expectations.
Absolutely.
And as a result of that, they will get that expectation, the societal expectation. But at the back of their minds, they're thinking, no, this is not what I wanted to do. I know of many people who have gone through even their doctorates and are now pursuing a Bachelor of Laws because their passion is in law, or even a Bachelor of Commerce because that's where their passion was. But because of societal requirements and because of the demands in terms of jobs, they have been forced into a separate or a different career.
Absolutely. That happened to me too. I remember that when I was trying to decide what to study for my bachelor's degree, my mother said to me, don't you think that you should be a doctor? Isn't it great that you get to save people's lives every single day? I don't know how she even managed to convince me to apply, but I applied for a medicine degree, and thank goodness Nairobi University rejected me. I would not be sitting here with you today. I'd probably be on the operating table somewhere right now.
Maya, this is what has to change in the country. Because I tell you, the young people in Kenya are restless. They're creative.
And they have a lot of energy.
They're full of energy.
Yes.
And that energy needs to be channeled in the direction the young person wants to.
And I'm asking for you, Professor Midamba, for KCA University, what do you guys do as a university to cultivate and to encourage these
We are going to be known
talents
as a university for incubation, for innovation in the future in the area of business and technology. We have created right now what's called Award for 25 under 25. And when you look at this exciting young people, and they were coming from all other universities, and they're assembled together, they're guided by KCAU motto, that you can be whatever you want. And in this group, there is a young man who is creating a system where if you are drunk and you start your car, the car will stop. The car will not. Of course, General Motors, Toyotas, and all other automobile companies are very interested. We have a young man from Madari Valley who had nothing in his life and actually used to come to my office and eat part of my lunch. So he absolutely had nothing. This young man is 24 years old, is a multi-millionaire, and he has hired 10 students working with him. Wow. So the idea is that I want a baccalaureate degree or a master degree or a PhD so I can work for somebody. Need to go. Because the future, this government cannot provide jobs.
Right.
The industry cannot provide jobs fast enough to accommodate the kind of students that are graduating every year. So students got to focus on creating their own jobs. And if they do that, then in about, I would say, 10, 15 years coming, okay, I can't think of it faster than that. We will have Singapore, and we will have Taiwan, and we will have South Korea.
And what I find so fascinating about that is that I know that the countries that you're mentioning actually did implement Kenya's blueprint.
Yes.
So it's quite interesting to see that it was successful.
Right.
The other question that I have, Dr. Karimi, I know that we are running out of our time for our first session here, but one question before we go to our break. Now, Professor Midamba briefly had talked about in terms of our employers and how they are complaining that yes, we have on paper A-grade students that have graduated, but when it comes to them practically delivering in the workforce, they're not able to do so. Now, some have criticized and say that it's because the people that they are admitting to the universities don't have the qualifications to do so. Others say that, the systems are so corrupt, that people can just buy the certificates. The question that I have for you is, what are your views? What do you think the problem is here that we are seeing that our graduates are not ready or well prepared for the workforce?
I think all this goes back to society and all the way to primary school. The upbringing. A child from the beginning is taught how to say yes to everything. You go to primary school and you're answering the NEC exams in terms of yes, no, very little of critical thinking in terms of multiple choice. You go to the secondary school, and again, you're required to reproduce what the teachers have told you. And that's why we have so much cramming going on. So here's a student who has passed well with an A and has gone into the university. What do you expect of them? They'll be asking, and I'm sure Professor will attest to this, they'll be asking for those notes. They want you to write the notes. They want you to dictate the notes. And so there's no critical thinking taking place. There's no, the students are not allowed to even make decisions. So when it comes to the workplace, that's the environment that they have grown up in. They go to the workplace and they're not able to produce. They're not able to make decisions because they have never grown up knowing that they are supposed to be making decisions. So I believe it all starts from down there, going up. But even from the university, I believe the universities should be able to take more time to involve the students, as Professor has said, in terms of critical thinking, in terms of skills development, in terms of innovation, and to be able to understand what does the market require vis-a-vis what is being provided in the universities. That would be my take.
Thank you so much for that. We need to take a quick break, but when we come back from the break, I want us to discuss the big debate that has been going on the last couple of months in the headlines right now, which is all about quality assurance and, of course, accreditation of our universities seems to be the conversation that we're having in the education sector. So make sure that you stay tuned here at TVC Kenya. More when we come back.